Hi everyone, welcome back to Next Diecast. In today's video, I'll be reviewing this 1/18 scale 1953 Studebaker Starliner made by Maisto, or Maisto depending on how you like to say their name. My dad found this model for me at our local Sam's Club for $20, which I thought was a great deal. This is a recent re-release from Maisto, and currently you can only find it in this nice looking green with the light gray roof and the light gray interior. In fact, this was actually a color that Maisto made this model in for quite some time when it was in its original release form. Maisto originally released this particular model around the early to mid 2000s and they discontinued it in 2017. And throughout its production run, it came primarily in this green that you see here with the gray roof and the gray interior, a lighter blue with, it was either a dark blue roof or a black roof, I couldn't tell from pictures, and the same light gray interior that you see, and kind of a coral color, like almost like a salmon, like pinkish red, with a white roof and the light gray interior as well. And there's a couple of other versions that are, I think, kind of rare. There's a bright orange, like custom version where it has like custom wheels and other different touches, I guess we'll say. I think that was from the Maisto All-Stars series or something. I saw a picture of the model on hobbydb.com, but I haven't seen any other pictures of that particular version of the model. And Maisto made a version of this in black with a Spider-Man graphics on the sides, and it had a white interior. I'm guessing that one was probably made in the mid-2000s because that was when Maisto had quite a lot of Marvel-related models that were released, including some harder to find 1/18 scale versions. But you can usually find the three, I guess, regular colored versions of this car on sites such as eBay for usually between, $20 and $45, depending on what the condition of the model is, whether or not it's in the original box, and if you're buying the newly released version. And of course, at least for right now, you can find this model at wholesale clubs such as Sam's Club, Costco, and BJ's as well, at least here in the United States. But they only have the models out seasonally, usually between like June and December or thereabouts. But you can otherwise find this model online on sites such as eBay and also on independent diecast model car websites such as Diecast Direct. I haven't seen any listings on Amazon for this model as of yet, but I imagine that they will follow at some point soon because this is a recent re-release. And the original release seems like it's nearly identical to the re-release of the model. I'm sure there are some slight differences in terms of quality, like I'm sure the paintwork is at least a slight bit better on this newer version than it is on the older version, but as far as the overall quality and details go, there really is no difference. So I wouldn't be too picky on the old version versus the new version. But that being said, if you want this particular color, that's currently your sole option as far as the re-release goes. If you were to want any of the other colors that I mentioned, you're going to have to go with the older release model. But again, the quality and details are going to be extremely similar to both. So this review will of course apply to both versions of the model. Now, Studebaker had the Commander Starliner and the Champion Starliner. The Commander and the Champion were, I guess, the two main series of cars that Studebaker was selling. And Studebaker was an American car company that produced cars between 1902 and 1968. And they were based in South Bend, Indiana. But the Commander is what this is modeled after. You can tell because this has the Studebaker Commander badge back here. Now, the Commander was equipped with the 3.8-liter V8 motor, and the Champion was equipped with a V6 motor. And the Commander, I think, was a slight bit bigger than the Champion, but aside from that, both models in real life had kind of the same range of like body styles and colors and everything. The Commander was just a more, I guess, higher level or a more like upscale version of the Champion. But the Commander Starliner is what this is modeled after once again. And you can also see that this has the V8 badges on it as well. But the Starliner was basically the coupe version of the Commander or the Champion series of cars. And there was actually a second coupe variant called the Starlight. And the Starlight actually had a pillar right here where the back window is, and I think a smaller back window. And there was some other, I guess, minor detail differences as well. It's kind of hard to explain the entire history of the Commander and the Champion lineups, I guess we'll say, in, a video. So if you want to learn more about the Studebaker model ranges online, there's certainly a lot of information about that. But there are not a lot of Studebaker diecast models out there. So I'm happy to see that Maisto produced the model of the Commander Starliner. This, I think, is one of my favorite Studebaker models in general. And of course, I do love cars of the 1950s. So I'm definitely happy to have this model in my collection of 1/18 scale models for those reasons, for sure. But we'll go ahead and take a look at the details of this model here. I'd say Maisto did an overall good job with this model, but I definitely think there are some aspects that can be improved upon if Maisto were to hypothetically re-release this a second time or something. But we'll go ahead and take a look at the details and the build quality of the model. We'll begin up here at the front. Maisto, I think, did a good job of capturing the overall look and shape of the Starliner. The Starliner is definitely a distinctive car, I think, especially when you compare it to the other very memorable looking vehicles of the 1950s. And I think this particular color suits the model quite well. This paint scheme was available on the real-life Starliner. As far as the Commander Starliner went, this was definitely a color that you could get on there. As far as the Champion Starliner, I think it had a similar color palette, if not an identical one. But there were a few different shades of green that you could get on the Studebaker Commander and Champion series of cars. I'm not really sure what the exact color name of this would be if this were the real-life paint color, but it's kind of like a seafoam green sort of color. But I think this really suits the model quite well, and personally, this is, I think, my favorite color of the various colors that Maisto released the model in. But anyway, back to the front here. Maisto did an overall good job of the look and shape of the car. In the front here, the headlights are nicely molded in plastic. You have the separately cast chrome surround on there, molded in plastic as well. There are pegs in the centers of each of the headlights, but if this were the real-life vehicle, that would kind of be where the headlight bulbs would be, so that's not really a big deal, I don't think. And the lenses are also nice and flush with the chrome surrounds too, which I do like to see. You do have the V8 badge on the hood, and this part's actually a separately cast piece of chrome plastic. It's a little bit rough, as you can see on that bottom part there. There is some, plastic that they didn't really bother to sand off or anything, so it doesn't really look that great when you look at it up close. But the fact that it's a separately cast plastic piece instead of just a stamped on, silver or chrome badge, I think that's a really cool touch. And then, of course, you have the number 8 in the center there in gold, for the V8 badge, which I think looks well done for sure. Nice chrome bumper down here. You do have these grills on here as well. And if you look closely, it actually says Commander on this side and Studebaker on that side. I actually did not notice that until after I got the model and was kind of poking around at the different fine details on it. So that is a really cool touch. And it's quite easy to miss that. Really cool attention to detail on Maisto's part there. And the grills themselves are slightly perforated, but you can see that there is kind of some chrome backing going on in there. So they aren't like completely see-through grills, but I think they are the right overall look and shape compared to what you would see on the real-life Commander Starliner's grills. So good job, I think, on Maisto's part. Paint quality on the model, I would say, is very well done. The paint finish is nice and smooth throughout the car. Don't see any rough regions or bubbling or anything like that. So I think Maisto did a good job in that sense. The roof is made out of plastic, but you can still lift the model up by the roof like so. I wouldn't make it a habit of, holding it up in the air like this or anything, but I think the roof and just the overall build quality of the model, I think, is very strong. So I do like to see that. They do a nice kind of light gray finish on the roof here, and it's kind of a similar glossy texture of paint that you see for the metal green portions of the car. So I do like to see that for sure. One thing I will say is that these are actually the worst attempts at windshield wipers that I think I've seen on a Maisto model, which is kind of unfortunate. You can see they're just kind of molded into the windshield frame here. They aren't even like semi-separately cast pieces of plastic, and you can't even tell that they are wipers from a far distance like that. So I'm not really a big fan of that, but that being said, this is a budget grade model, so a lot of the other aspects of this model I think are quite well done. It's just these wipers, I kind of saw them and thought, that's odd, but not a big deal. Aside from that, though, the actual windshield frame itself is done in a separately cast piece of chrome plastic. There is a slight gap between the windshield up here and the roof, but that's probably just a factory defect for my model. So, not a big deal. The wheels, however, I think are very well done. They have the white wall tires on there as well, and they even have that trim that matches with the body color, which is a cool touch. Nice chrome finish going on the wheels as well. And then you do have these centers, which are done in yellow, as you can see right here, or kind of like a gold. You can't really tell if it's meant to be yellow or gold, but they look pretty well done. Of course, you also have steering on the model, as you can see right here, and suspension as well. Very good suspension too, especially back here. So that's kind of an interesting thing to see. You got the V8 badges stamped on the sides back here, which you would of course see on the real life vehicle. I do like how Maisto included that on there. And then you have the painted on silver for the door handle and for the keyhole as well. You also have what appears to be the retracted radio antenna up here on the driver's side of the car. So that's a cool touch as well. In the back here, you'll see the Commander inscription done in this reflective silver, and then you have the Studebaker badge painted on here. And you also have a separately cast piece of plastic for the trunk latch, which I think is a cool touch, because that's actually a very small piece, as you can see right here, compared to my finger. But I do like how Maisto put that on there as a separately cast piece of plastic instead of just, painting one on in like the shape of the latch. So another cool detail, I think, on Maisto's part. And then you have that V8 badge back here as well. Maisto probably could have gotten away with doing this same thing on the front of the car, but I do like how they went ahead and did that separately cast piece of chrome plastic for that badge on the hood. That is a really cool detail, I think, for a budget grade Maisto model. Of course, back here you have a nice chrome bumper with the California license plate. And then you have these nicely cast taillights back here as well. They have a nice chrome surround on them. There are pegs that are a little bit noticeable, but from a distance you really can't see them. And these are tiny taillights. A lot of model companies probably would have just painted these things on here, but Maisto actually went to the trouble of putting them in as separately cast pieces of red plastic. And you also have pinstriping as well. That extends from the taillights up to the back windows. As far as the opening features on the model go, you do have the opening rear trunk, which opens up like so. It is a little bit stiff. It does open up on dogleg hinges, so just be careful with how frequently you lift this up, because the hinges may weaken over time. But as far as the detail in the trunk goes, you do have that spare tire, which has the cover on it, as you can see here. Of course, it's just a piece of plastic. There's not an actual tire in there or anything. But it is a slight bit small compared to the actual wheels and tires that you see on the car, but at least Maisto put that back in there. I think it is a separately cast piece of plastic. You can't remove it or anything like that, but it is a separate color and texture from the rest of the trunk. So I do like how Maisto included that back there for sure. And the rest of the trunk has this gray plastic liner going on. As you can see, there is kind of a huge gap. I guess that's to accommodate these hinges, but you're probably going to be looking at the trunk like this in most cases when you have it raised up. So you probably won't see that big gap back there. But as far as the rest of the trunk goes, it is cast in plastic, and it is the right overall shape and texture compared to what you would see if this were to be the real life vehicle. So Maisto, I think, did a good job back here with the trunk for sure. And then you also get the opening hood on the model as well. And the hood is quite an interesting shape, as you can see here. It kind of has that point in the center of it, but you just raise the hood up like so. It doesn't open up very high. I don't want to force it up or anything like that. It has kind of the same thick dog-like hinges that you see for the rear trunk, but at least when you do raise up the hood, you can see the very well-detailed 3.8 liter V8 engine in here that Maisto replicated, I think, quite nicely. You can see that the engine is made up of a few different plastic pieces. There is some coloring going on in there with different labels and everything. There is some different wires and hoses and some additional components like that you can see throughout the engine bay here. I think a little bit more detail definitely would have been welcome. It's seen that this is a Maisto model that you can get for usually below $40. I think the engine detail is quite well done in the model. You can see the battery back there as well. And there is some nice detail going on with the main block. And of course, the car does look cool up on the shelf like this too, with the hood raised, especially with that level of detail that you see in the engine. So I think Maisto did a great job with the engine detail on this model for sure. A little bit more fine detailing, I guess, would have been a nice touch, but because this is a budget model, I think the engine detail is very well done, especially because you can get this model for below $50 in most cases. And of course, you also have the opening doors on the model as well. They open up on spring-loaded hinges. Now, there is an issue with my model in that the vent window actually gets caught with the roof right here. You can actually hear it when it opens and closes. Actually, I'll push it shut and then I'll show you. There, so you can kind of see it like as it pulls out. So that's probably just a factory defect for my model, but just be careful when you're opening and closing these doors because you don't want to get the vent window caught and then get it like broken off or anything like that. But as long as you're very careful when you open up the doors, you shouldn't have a problem with that. Once again, they open up on spring-loaded hinges. They don't open up very wide, unfortunately, but at least they open up to begin with. We'll get this one opened up here as well. The interior detail, I think, is pretty well done for a budget-grade model, especially for a Maisto model. You can see on the dashboard here, all the different gauges that you would see on the real vehicle are present. I think the steering wheel looks very good as well. There's actually a separately cast piece of chrome plastic for the center portion there. You have the nice badge in the center cast in gold plastic. And then for the dashboard, you have kind of this chrome band going across it. And it even says Commander behind the steering wheel there, which is a very cool touch. You can see the gauges are done in separate stickers, which I like to say. And the dashboard is done in kind of a smooth gray plastic. And then, of course, once again, you have that kind of chrome band going down the center. Looks like there is some molded-in buttons going on that chrome band, and I assume that's what you would see on the real vehicle. Of course, the real vehicle would probably have, different labeling going on with the buttons, but I think what Maisto has there looks very well done for a budget model. You have nice detail on the door panels as well, a couple different colors and textures going on. Kind of hard to see in this lighting. Get a better look on this side here. And you actually have the window crank and door handle cast into the plastic as well. It almost looks like you can operate these window cranks on here. That's how well Maisto had detailed them. Of course, they aren't, you can't like move them or anything, but I think the way that Maisto molds them into the plastic door panel, they look really well done. So I do like to see that level of detail in here for sure. The seats in the model look very well done as well. Maisto did a good job with the overall look, shape, and texture to the seats. You even have the center armrest in this rear seat back here, which is a really cool touch. You can see that there are window cranks back here for the rear windows. Yeah, I think for a Maisto interior, Maisto did a good job in here. You even have the buttons on the seat bottoms that, of course, in real life would be, stitched into like the leather or the cloth that the real interior would have. But Maisto actually molded those into the plastic seats. So that was, I think, a really cool detail that they put into this model. And then, of course, you don't have carpeting in the model, but the floors have a different texture compared to the seats that kind of simulates carpeting. So I think Maisto did a good job with the interior of this model for sure. As far as the undercarriage detail on the model goes, you can see that Maisto does mold in the exhaust system in chrome plastic, and you can see some of the engine detail as well as the steering system on the undercarriage of the model as well. So good job, I think, for a budget grade model's undercarriage. So I think this is definitely a unique model, and I'm glad that Maisto made it because, again, there really aren't that many models of a Studebakers out there as far as die-cast models, and many of them are budget-grade models of Studebakers. I know that there's a model out there of the Studebaker Champion, the early 1950s Studebaker Champion. I believe Road Signatures made that. There's also one of the Studebaker Havanti as well. I forget who makes that, though, but there's a few Studebaker models out there, but there aren't that very many. And the company hasn't been around for many years now. So it is really cool to see that Maisto decided to re-release this model in their 1/18 scale line. I'm not sure how long Maisto will be producing this model since they only re-released it in just this one color that you have, which I think is the best color of the bunch of colors that Maisto released on this model. But I would say if you can find the model for a good price, I would definitely get it. especially if you're a fan of classic cars or of American cars in general, or even just, unique vehicles from the 1950s. I think this model would be a solid addition to your collection. I think there definitely are some areas that can be improved upon, like some different aspects of the build quality and, just a lack of some details like the windshield wipers and, some minor detail improvements on the interior and the engine. But this is a budget grade model, and I think for a budget grade model, this model is very well done as far as build quality and details go. So I think as long as you can find it for below $45, you're getting a good deal. Feel free to comment down below with your thoughts on this model or on the review here. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.